is Jasmine. I'm an illustrator working on a medieval comic. Welcome to my channel. For today's video, I'll be focusing on something a little bit different, something experimental, something that I've never done before, even more so than the alcohol markers that I worked a few months ago. I'm going to be trying out acrylic markers. Have I worked with acrylic paint? Yes. But in marker form? No. So that's where the whole this is new territory for me comes in. A few months ago, the art supply company Woomer, they reached out to me to try out their colored pencils, which I really like. They recently reached out to me to try out their acrylic markers, and I said, why not? Let me see what I can do with this. And I've had this idea floating around in my head for a while. I just never really had the chance to like sit down and try it because it would take time to figure it out. Maybe that might make things easier. I don't know. This is, again, like new for me. I don't know where this video is gonna go. She's literally biting my arm, you guys. We just played. We just played a lot. When are you gonna take her nappy? So, what I had in mind was to make some girl night art, but in the style of a medieval manuscript. I know this sounds slightly familiar to you because I create the interior chapter illustrations for my comic as a medieval manuscript, but I don't do it in the traditional painted version of medieval paintings. So like this kind of stuff. They're made with tempera or oil. I've never really tried that style because it is more of a oil paintery style. I'm a drawer. I like line art a lot. So I've stayed away from trying to create that particular style. But maybe could try a jab at it with these lovely markers. You're welcome to tag along. Let's see what I can do with these. Alright, so there are 72 colors in this set. In the back you can see all of the colors listed. There's a little blurb on how to use them. You just shake them briefly before opening the cap and dispensing the paint. I know that they're working on new packaging, but I'm not sure if that means that the entire way it's stored is going to be changed or if it's just the label, because the label underneath this plastic wrapping is different. It's in Chinese. And so maybe they're going to be making actual permanent changes down the line. But for now, I like the cute Chinese packaging. It's actually 6 separate trays. Once they're all buckled together, there's a handle at the top, so theoretically they'd be really good for traveling if you're sketching on the go. But I will say, having to unbuckle each tray just to get to certain colors, that might be kind of a pain. Love that it has a carrying case. Not crazy about how it's kind of complicated to be able to access all of them at the same time. As far as the colors, it has a pretty good range. For 72 colors, you do get like the basic reds, the basic blues, greens, and a few browns and grays. They are quick drying with a flexible nylon tips, so there shouldn't be any fraying. I'm gonna assume this new generation of acrylic markers, there won't be a problem. I then just quickly did some sketches to get used to this medium and to see, can I get really thin lines? And more importantly, how much paint comes out of this at once. Once I did a little bit of experimenting, I drew on top of it with my fountain pen just to see how well it can take some fountain pen ink, which it took it kind of blotchy, but I think it works with the style already. So I think it came out pretty good for an initial sketch. Oh, and I did test it on my regular sketchbook and saw that it didn't bleed through. So if you have pretty thick paper for sketchbook, these can totally work. I use this sketchbook for jotting down thumbnails, and I've used this mostly for my freelance work. So there's a lot of thumbnails from previous illustration jobs that I have done. But because I haven't freelanced in a while, I don't use it very often. The last time I used this was for chapter 3's cover, which didn't end up looking like this. But this was last year. The other last time I used this was in 2024. And the time before that was 2023. So I'm using this once a year. Isn't that crazy? That's not to say that I don't thumbnail. It's just I've reserved those thumbnail things for other books. Anyways, I've made this section now to figure out what I would like to do with these markers. This time around, I worked outside. So I set out these trays and I continued to experiment with different papers because acrylic in general is pretty cool in that it's very flexible on different types of paper. But because these are in marker form, they are going to contain a certain amount of water in them. Black did really good with maintaining opacity, but there were some grays and blues that disappeared practically. Now I could use straight up watercolor paper, but I'm trying to use up all of my art supplies. I have this Bristol paper from Strathmore that I don't use very often, so I wanted to see if I could use it for this purpose and try to use it up. And it did pretty good, so I went ahead and tried to recreate some of the motifs that I saw in these medieval illustrations. That was the challenge, you guys. Not being able to mix these colors was the biggest challenge. These medieval illustrations, there's a lot of little blending that's done. I only have like 2 colors to work with, and I'm trying to recreate this like more gradient color mixes that is part of the challenge in trying to recreate this style. But I'm not giving up. Especially with this green dress, I really wanted to see the extent of how much variation can I get from one color. Looking back at it now, it's kind of silly because when people use acrylic markers, the expectation is consistent all around as far as paint goes. That's the point of a marker. And here I'm trying to break it, and that's okay. I've been wanting to try this out, so it's a learning process. For my second attempt, we're gonna push a little bit harder on this challenge by coloring a character from my comic and trying to paint it in this style. Now, I will be using that very loosely, painting it in that style, because looking back at what I didn't quite paint it in the medieval style, but it was inspired and I was kind of on a roll with it. This was all very experimental. I don't really know what I'm doing and just trying to have fun. As for who this character is, this is Nicole. She's one of the members in the female mercenaries in my story. You won't get to meet her as a reader until we get to the tournament in the story. Her main specialty of weapons is the crossbow, and she's very popular with the ladies because she's a big flirt. Now, where I see that there's gonna be pretty strong shadows, I plan on going over them and blurring them out to keep that like smooth shading still intact. I found putting down the paint pretty forgiving. When you put down a color and you decide that the whole shape shouldn't have that color, you can go over it with another color and maybe 50 to 80% in opacity. Like black, for example, is so damn opaque that it's almost like a Sharpie, versus some of these very light yellows, they're pretty transparent. Now, I'm not sure if that's normal for these different pigments to have those qualities. I will say that the opacity in these markers is not consistent. I didn't mind it because I'm trying to do a more painterly style, so it's actually nice to have some transparency, but assuming that people are using acrylic markers for graphic styles, they are expecting high opacity out of these things. Hello, I'm back from day job to continue to explore these acrylic markers. I don't know if I've mentioned it already in the voiceover, but I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, and I'm just trying to have fun here. And that is the attitude I'm intentional about maintaining when it comes to trying out any kind of medium. Let's continue with that last piece. I'd like to add a background and then overline it because I love a good line art on top, but it's gonna be loose so that it matches the more looser painting style. I did the first layer of color for the character. Now I had to think about the background. What background color would work nicely with the colors I've already put down? I also decided what pattern, and so I based it on this medieval pattern. And then I messed up. And then I tried to cover it with white paint, which, as mentioned, some colors aren't super opaque. And we're gonna move on. For the background color, I decided on a lilac, so it wouldn't be such a high contrast with the yellows that I went for. It's actually very satisfying to put down large swaths of color from these markers. There is a lot of variation when you put the paint down. Again, I'm gonna say this 50 times. I like that it comes out painterly, but if you are expecting that graphic style, these aren't gonna do that. At least on the first application. You could probably get an even layer if you layer the markers on top of each other. So if I did 2 or 3 layers of this lilac, it probably would all look even. And now for the shadings. This is the part that I had to really fight these acrylic markers, and that was purely my personal choice. This has nothing to do with the actual markers as a product. I wanted more subtle shadows, but because I have a limited palette, I had to whip out the extra brush and use it to not only blend really quickly before the paint dried, but also dab the marker and use it to directly paint on the paper and really paint in smaller details. I think if you want to use these markers to still be sketching on the go, just take a little brush with you. That way you can use it for blending and painting really small details. I don't think that's going to complicate your whole painting work setup. Using this little brush definitely relieved some of my stress in being able to control how these colors were put down. And after a while, it made me realize, honestly, these acrylic markers aren't a bad idea, again, to be traveling painting. If you take a brush with you, you do unlock like a new ability to be able to use acrylics on the go without having to do a full setup and dab acrylics on a palette and do all that whole process. Like if you're tight on time and you need portability, but you're still an acrylic painter in that sense, this kind of unlocks your ability to paint on the go. From day job again. I don't know what else to say other than let's keep playing with these markers. Oh, line art. So after coloring fully this illustration and adding colored pencils, I still think it needs line art. Now I was thinking of doing it with pencil, but I do have all of these beautiful inks, and now that I have this nice setup for them, I'm gonna actually use them again. Here are the permanent inks. These are shimmery glitter inks. And then these are my everyday fountain pen inks, which means that they can be affected by water. So if I want to use these, they have to be the last step, which thankfully it is. I don't plan to add any more stuff to this, so I can consider all of my inks, which I have a swatch here. For the line art, I think I'll do a black, but because this is the fountain pen ink, it has a lot of variation in opacity, I guess you could say. Yeah, opacity. If I do the actual calligraphy ink, it's consistently thick, versus here I get some variation, which might look nice. Hi. I've been really liking this Tachikawa pen nib. It draws a really thin line. Yes, I'm putting a glove on because I am not liking having stained hands after an art session, so glove it is. That's the best I could do. For the next and last illustration that I would like to do with these acrylic markers is to expand on the medieval style and try to incorporate some girl knight characters into this very strict medieval style, just for funsies. Alright, so I have separated the colors that I'm going to use, and I've swatched them in this sample paper, so I know exactly which colors go where. Will it look good? Probably not, but it's gonna be interesting to try at least. And we're back, trying to mix these colors. The purpose of this sky is to make it as gradient as possible. So I used 4 different blues, and I had to go back and forth to try to get them mixed before they dried, because these markers do dry really fast. So you only have a window of a few seconds to be able to do any blending. One little detail that I like about medieval paintings is that when they do paint skies, you can see the brush strokes sometimes that they kind of like dot. So it made blending these markers a little bit more forgiving because it didn't have to be a fully seamless transition of colors, like you could still see brush strokes. I'm gonna switch over to the colored pencils and define these lines. I'm not crazy about this piece, but it's still been fun to try out a new technique, so it's not a big deal. So there's my personal introduction using Woomer's acrylic marker set. Very, very interesting. Final thoughts? These are literally just acrylic paints put into tubes with a specific brush size. I would recommend these as just low stakes type of making art, particularly with sketching. It does come in a compact pack with the handle. It would be nice to access these in an easier way. It is a little time consuming to unlock each buckle to remove every tray. Maybe you could transfer this for a marker organizer for ease of access, and then use this when you're traveling. I'm not sure about trying to mimic the medieval style using traditional supplies yet. This was definitely just an amateur run. To truly properly try to get a medieval illustration, I would need much smaller brushes, a larger variety of colors, so I have to be able to mix colors for sure, especially in trying to get those gradients that medieval manuscripts really shine in. In the next video, I'm going to show you what my daily sketchbook is going to look like for this new year. I will be incorporating these acrylic markers into my daily sketching habit, so it'll be interesting to see what else I can create without sort of these confines of it has to be medieval illustration. It's just going to be an additional art supply in my studio, so stay tuned for the next video, which will be that sketchbook flip through and discussing the new sketchbook. If you're not subscribed to my channel, do subscribe. That way you can be notified when a new video comes up. I make content around drawing my comic and dabbling in traditional art supplies for now, it seems. Do stick around and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!